Now, though, let's look to the future, and Mal Fletcher joins me now, who's a futurist. Mal, how are you?
I'm very well, Petrie. How are you?
Oh, brilliant. It's lovely to see you as ever. Let's talk AI and elections. There was some interference, we know that. There were some deep fakes, but I wonder if people actually did spot those. But is there a report on how much AI did interfere with our election?
I don't think there is yet, and I think that's an indication of how little government actually thinks about AI in the electoral processes. One of the things that marked this election, of course, on a more light-hearted note, I suppose, is that we had our first ever AI-generated candidate.
Yeah.
AI Steve, as he was called. And
the name was a bit of a giveaway, wasn't it, on the ballot?
Yeah. just a little bit. It was basically just an online avatar, and it offered to have a chatbot conversation with everyone in the constituency. I think it was Brighton Pavilion. Didn't do very well, but it did show that AI will soon be part of our elections. And I think Tony Blair gave some advice, good advice, to the Labor Party just before the election. He said, you've got to focus on this technology revolution. It's going to change everything about our society. And I think he was right. AI could easily threaten so much that we take for granted with our democracy. In manipulating public opinion, you mentioned deep fakes, in producing micro-targeted propaganda, identifying people who are susceptible to certain forms of suggestion, then targeting them with propaganda that plays on those fears. It could be used in cyber attacks by unfriendly foreign powers. And that's going to be a big challenge as we move more and more towards electronic voting in the next decade. So, democracy relies on transparency, but AI systems are opaque. We don't always know who's building them, how they're built, what they're doing, or who might be misusing them. So the government needs to pay attention, Petrie, to this now, not in 3 or 4 years or 5 years when we have our next election.
The thing is, I did wonder when Tony Blair made this point if he had any shares in AI companies, but that's just me being incredibly cynical, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, look, we don't really know it, do we? That's the problem. It's out. This beast is out there. That all we know is that it can lie. We know that it is racist. We know that it does have issues, but it's out there now. There's no putting that back in the bottle, is there?
No, not really. And it is growing. If you listen to the latest reports, I mean, there are different figures out every week, but the latest report says it's growing in quite phenomenal ways that even its pioneers don't really understand and haven't done for some time. And they're quite honest about that now. We don't really know how it's doing, what it's doing. I saw one report last week by a person who was a pioneer of AI who said, 5 years ago, I thought it would take 14 years to get to where we are today. And here we are, and it's growing faster than we can imagine. And used the wrong way, I think it can sow distrust, not just in public institutions, but in our fellow citizens. Most of us already suspect that social media has had a very negative effect on social cohesion, but imagine how much worse things would be if you added AI to that list, to that mix. And it could push us toward authoritarianism, which none of us in Britain want. Autocratic regimes rely on misleading the public, on playing on its fears and manipulating opinion. So we need to hold developers to account, and we need to make sure governments act on all of this.
Well, looking at one of the uses of AI, which definitely terrifies me, is warfare and weaponry, and because I think AI in medicine, great, that's one of the good uses of AI so far, but in weaponry, it has got limitless applications, and it just removes that humanity from warfare.
Yes, I agree totally. It's one of those moral minefields that AI produces. One example is what we call lethal autonomous weapons systems, LAWS, laws. These are machines that are programmed to identify and attack targets without any human intervention. And we've got governments now in the UK, as well as the US, China, India, Australia, I think South Korea, all developing or researching these AI-powered autonomous weapons. And some are spending big in the belief that they'll recoup their costs because they won't have to pay soldiers in the future. But what we save on wages, we'll pay for, I think, in what you're suggesting, a deficit of human values. Sending machines into battle will save lives in the immediate conflict, but it may mean that we forget it's humans who still suffer most in war, including the innocent and non-combatants, the children, as we've seen in Ukraine.
I mean, that is just so terrifying to me that you've got this machine. What I'm thinking about is those robot dogs, which are autonomous weaponry. That they're just told to shoot somebody who is a certain height, a certain build, wearing a certain... I don't know how they will identify their enemy combatant. But, I mean, that's literally... There'll be no thought process. There'll be no, oh, this person is injured, or there's no like I said, no humanity. And that has got to be... I mean, look, war is disgusting, OK? There's barely any humanity in it. But there is some humanity, and there is a will to end that war because of the cost to humanity. But if we've got a situation where there's no direct cost to humanity, these wars just go on and on forever. And as you said, it's the innocent people that will die in the surrounding of those two weapons dogs fighting each other.
Yeah, and it raises all kinds of ethical questions on the back of what you've just said. I mean, it's evolving so quickly, AI. How do we keep it accountable? How do we know exactly what it's up to at any given time, especially when it's released into weaponry, not just drones, but tanks and submarines and ships, all unmanned? Will machines mistake civilians for enemy fighters, especially at a time when our battles are being fought in urban centres? Will weapons develop, because we develop weapons to stay ahead of the competition, will we end up with a new global arms race, a new form of mutually assured destruction? So if AI learns through network connections, which it does, what's to stop it from getting into the control systems of nuclear missiles?
I mean, really, it's this science fiction, which is now science fact, that it's just so horrific. And just because we can do something, is it in the best interest of humanity to do it? Just quickly, AI washing. What's this?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's a bit like greenwashing, where companies tell fibs about their green credentials. It's the same with AI now. Companies are starting to exaggerate the use of AI in their products, and some downright lie about it. Companies use cool buzzwords like AI-driven or machine learning without actually explaining what the AI actually does. And so some, for example, boast about using a chatbot that understands complex human questions when actually all it's doing is relying on pre-programmed responses. So it's nothing more than just another piece of software. And there are privacy concerns here that are very important. If a company claims to use AI for something like facial recognition, who owns the data and who has access to it? Is it going to be sold to third parties? If AI washing is allowed to flourish, many people are going to lose trust in the good benefits of AI and stop using it.
I'd like to go and hide under my bed now.
How do you think I feel?
Yeah, I know. You can see the future. I'm only just getting to grips with it now. Mal, it's always a pleasure, and I hope sometime in our very near future we'll be talking again. Mal Fletcher there, Futurist. Stay where you are. We're talking movies next.